Jupiter in Scorpio is going to bring about all of the emotional frustrations as our security buttons get pushed. Again, if you don't have the Taurus polarity of self-reliance, then you don't trust your universe, and you get very frustrated because you're not in control, you're not in power. It feels like you're powerless to the universe. So that polarity is always teaching us to deepen our inner self-reliance in order to find that courage, Scorpio word as well as Aries, to find that courage to move forward in new ways. And as we are moving through all this and really deepening in our sense of self and self-reliance, self-trust, self-love, evolving towards those returning desires, eventually we get to the possibility of soulmates. And that can be one of the deep themes of Jupiter and Scorpio, clearing out some of those karma mates so that we can really align ourselves with a deeply spiritual committed relationship and a soulmate. And from the perspective of EA, the definition of soulmates are two people whose driving intent is their own spiritualization process. And they come together for the purpose of supporting and helping each other on that spiritualization process, even if the best solution is the Y in the road. In other words, the shift from conditional to unconditional love. Of course, Jupiter in Scorpio will bring up all kinds of sexuality issues and lessons. It will bring the distortions due to patriarchal conditioning principles that have been on the planet for so long. It'll bring all of those sexual distortions out onto front and center stage. For instance, Hugh Hefner, who started the Playboy magazine after World War II in the late 50s in response to Leave It to Beaver and all of the, mom and pop and everything is just a wonderful, cushy world that we had in the 50s post-World War II. There was a lot of it that was pretty good, some of our most prosperous times. And yet there was still some suppression of sexuality via a lot of religious social conditionings. And when something is suppressed, it is going to come out one way or another. You can suppress truth, but you can't destroy it. And sexuality is one of the most natural laws on planet Earth. As a matter of fact, as we discussed in part 1, the last separating desire to be released is the sexual desire. On a natural basis, only 1 to 2% of souls on planet Earth have naturally exhausted the sexuality desire. Yes, the procreation of the species, but also the last desire that's going to go because of that incarnation into the human form. And of course, as we're working with that dual desire nature, death can be the ultimate lesson of leaving the separating desires behind, reaching the next level of self-reliance, and merging with Source. And of course, in one line here, resources, which includes money, which includes all the material stuff and everything that you can combine, including merging your resources with another, which we have a tendency to do in any marriage type committed relationship. This is also a major Scorpio archetype. We'll go into some more details of this as we go around the 12 houses. So Jupiter in Scorpio brings the potential to identify the essence of whatever issues of area of life we need to focus upon, to penetrate, to discover, and to solve whatever mysteries of life exist for the betterment of ourself and for others in general. Now, one thing to keep in mind as we go through Jupiter transiting through the 12 houses, if you are having your Jupiter return and you have Jupiter in Scorpio, it's going to fall into one of those 12 houses. And as we go through this transiting of the 12 houses, any of the archetypes we speak about is going to relate to anyone who has natal Jupiter in one of those 12 houses. All right, so before we move into the first house, I'm going to quickly get my little clock, which gives me my timer, because I want to be fair and equal. Jupiter almost finished up with Libra. I'm going to be fair and equal to all 12 houses as best as I can watch the clock, so I'll be right back.
Just as a quick reminder to everybody on the call tonight, we are accepting fall enrollments to our Evolutionary Astrology course. We have just completed the first in a series of webinars, monthly live webinars for associates and students of the course with the Sun Square the Nodes class. That's in your registered associates area if you are a participant and an associate on this call. If you're not, feel free to purchase your course materials and get immediate access to all those archives and webinars as we have completed them. So how are you doing, Kim? Did you find your
Yeah, I just thought it might be better to just literally have a clock in front of me and looking at our time so that I can, again, coming off of Jupiter and Libra, give equal measure to each of the 12 houses as best as I can. Keep in mind also, as we looked at those beginning slides, Scorpio is that principle of death, both literal and figurative. And so many of us, whenever any planet moves through that sign of Scorpio, we don't know whether the symbol is going to be figurative or whether it is going to be literal. Jupiter in Scorpio, because it's the principle of expansion, will many times bring the release of something materialistic in order to expand into. So that can cover resources, that can cover relationships, that can cover whatever we are clinging to on a codependent level. And of course, it can include the archetype of death and dying. So no matter which one of the 12 houses Jupiter transits, we could see that happen. And as I was pondering that, it just popped in. It was like, oh, Jupiter in Scorpio 3rd could be death of a friend. Jupiter Scorpio 4th, death of a family member. Jupiter and Scorpio transiting through the 5th house, death of a childhood classmate. Jupiter transiting through Scorpio in the 6th house could be death of a coworker. So we don't quite know how it will work, and we don't know whether it will be literal or figurative. But one of the major things to remember when it is literally death, it is just a door. It is just a transition from a physical incarnation back into the non-physical form. Because again, as Pluto, ruler of Jupiter, or excuse me, Scorpio and the 8th house represents the soul is that mutable, immutable consciousness that exists from lifetime to lifetime. So anything that comes forth into a living, breathing embodiment, be it two-legged or four-legged, or, you know, be it having petals and leaves and flowers, it's never not existing. It just changes the form of how it exists. And this is something to remember from a perspective of hope. because chances are Jupiter and Scorpio, there can be some intensities that are going on. This transit is falling into the base note of the Uranus waxing squares to Pluto. This transit is falling into the base note of consensus political leaders who think they can create peace by building bigger and bigger and bigger bombs. I make the joke, people will ask me, do you think, somebody's going to go crazy and annihilate planet Earth? And I make the lighthearted joke, well, we'll all just reincarnate in another galaxy, in another solar system, on another planet Earth. We won't cease to exist. We'll find another place to pick up where we left off. So hopefully in some way that brings a little bit of comfort as we deal with this issue of death and dying through Jupiter and Scorpio when it comes along on that literal basis. So